morning, everybody. I wish I could be here in person, but I have a very full schedule, so at least we get to meet virtually. I hope to be in person next time. My name is Julien. I'm the chief evangelist for a machine learning startup called Hugging Face. I've been with Hugging Face for about 2 years. And the mission of Hugging Face is to promote open source, state-of-the-art AI. We built a website which is called the Hugging Face Hub, which happens to be the focal point of open source AI. People call us the GitHub of machine learning, which I think is a fair analogy. Just like you go to GitHub to find and share models, find and share code, you go to the Hugging Face Hub to find and share models and data sets. And we also build libraries, open source libraries that are extremely popular. So if you want to think about Hugging Face in 3 words, open, simple, and state-of-the-art, right? We insist on those 3 things. Help you work with the latest and greatest models coming from the best tech organizations in just a few lines of code, and keeping everything open source and transparent. Before working for Hugging Face, I worked for AWS for a few years. And in fact, Hugging Face is also partnering with cloud companies such as AWS and others, as well as hardware companies like Intel, AMD, to help accelerate those models on different hardware. So it's a very, a very lively platform, very busy platform. We have a huge community, and we're really excited to help customers build with open source AI. Sure, let me explain what we do on the open source side, what we do on the commercial side. So on the open source side, and first and foremost, Hugging Face is a technology company. I would say 90% of the team is engineers and PhDs. And again, first and foremost, we contribute models, data sets, open source libraries together with the community. And that's really the core of the company. We insist on keeping everything open, so that if you decide to work only with open source, you can really build everything you want to build. Of course, for commercial organizations, there's always the need to go faster and not reinvent the wheel, and focus on solving the business problem with AI. So for this purpose, we also build some commercial services for application hosting, model deployment, etc., etc. And as mentioned before, we partner with cloud companies so that you can take your existing state-of-the-art model, right, that was released by Meta or Google or whoever, and in just a few lines of code, deploy it in the cloud and train it in the cloud if you want to fine-tune it, if you want to specialize it for your own purpose. And again, the vision is to stay open source, but also make it easy to run all the open source ecosystem that we steward in the cloud across different hardware. So I can give you maybe a few examples. I'm meeting with a lot of customers, including in Dubai, amazing conversations. So lots of generative AI scenarios deal with increasing productivity, maybe replacing manual processes, maybe replacing legacy IT. And a lot of that has to deal with document management, classifying documents, summarizing documents, validating documents. Did the customer sign this? Did the customer tick the right box, etc.? And these are reasonably easy to automate. Code generation also, helping developers write better code quicker is very important, and code generation model can help you do that. Of course, chatbots, knowledge bases, finding the right information at the right time is very important too. Content generation, answering customer emails automatically, generating marketing content, generating email campaigns, personalized in natural language, generating images, branding, product placement, and the list goes on. I mean, I could go on for 2 hours. So generative AI really brings a lot of new capabilities for enterprise and public sector customers to innovate. how can we help startups is a really good question. It's not just for large customers. I mean, startups need to be very nimble, right? Finding product market fit, going quick, finding the right product for your and getting user feedback on it is critical. And obviously there are so many things you need to do in a startup. You have a small team, you have limited time, you have limited capital. So you have to pick your fights in a way. So what's the core value proposition of your startup? What's the core product you're trying to build? Everything around it is needed, but you can't build everything yourself. You should not reinvent the wheel. So if you need, let's say, if you want to build voice capabilities in your app or in your service, you will need speech to text, okay? There are plenty of good speech to text models out there, and you can integrate them easily off the shelf in your app in just a few lines of code. Maybe you need to deal with multiple languages, right? Because you serve international customers, and you will need translation models. There are plenty of good translation models, etc. So a lot of those tasks are really commodity tasks now, and you can solve them with pre-trained models and a few lines of code. And then maybe for the core business stuff, there's an opportunity to actually create value by training or fine-tuning a model on your own data. So maybe a chatbot, maybe you're building a customer support application, maybe you're building an online banking application, who knows, and you want to have a unique experience. And that unique experience can come from, again, a pre-trained model that you fine-tune on your own data. And that creates, I would say, defensible intellectual property. And it actually adds value to the startup because you have this asset trained on unique data that no one else can easily replicate. So it's a balancing act. The commodity stuff, go quick, take it off the shelf. The core value proposition, build it yourself. It's simpler than you think, especially with Hugging Face, and you just add value to your company. For large companies, I think it's even more important because generally, again, innovating is key for them. They may have a stable business, they've been going on for 50 years. They have no reason to worry, and yet it's a competitive market. So one of their competitors could actually create that new model or that new user experience based on data, and and the rabid startups could be doing the same. So I think it's not, I'm not promoting fear or anything like that, but I think large companies, large organizations have a ton of data, right? That's the main asset they have. Smaller startups may not have that. So if you're a manufacturing company, you have mountains of data. So you need to go and unlock that data, which could be somewhere in the company. Identifying what you have, listing what you have is already a challenge. But if you go and do the data work, the data engineering work, which is really the prerequisite, then you realize you have unique data going back maybe decades, right? And I keep telling customers, if you have financial data from 30 years ago, it's still very good. We worked with Bloomberg, one of our customers, to help them train their own model called Bloomberg GPT. Bloomberg is known for having tons of long-lasting quality data, right? So that was a good thing to do, but other companies can do that. If you have healthcare data from 50 years ago, it's still good. And guess what? It will still be good in 50 years. So if you invest in preparing your data, curating your data, then you can radically improve and maybe invent business processes that, again, give you an edge on the competition and help serve your customers better. So that's really what everybody is looking at. Not so much about the latest and greatest models. Models will come and go. The data may live on forever. How does Hugging Face differentiate? So we're open source and open source. Some open source companies in the past have gone, as they grew, they've gone the community edition versus enterprise edition routes. We're not doing that. Everything we build, everything the community builds is open and will stay open. So again, if you're a student or if you're a small company and you just want to tinker, experiment, you can do everything the larger players do, working only with open source. Okay, and we think open source models have they level the playing field really, because you get access to the latest and greatest models, like the Falcon model that was trained in Abu Dhabi, which is currently the best open source large language model available. You can use it in a few lines of code. You also get the full transparency. You know what the models are. You know what the architecture is. You know what data they've been trained on. The data sets are actually on Hugging Face as well, right? The data set for Falcon is available. You can see exactly what went into the model. There's probably a research paper telling you what happened. And then, of course, we take those models and we integrate them in our own library. So we write the code for that, and you can read that code, and you can contribute to that code. So the full transparency is critical, at a time where you see other products which are closed models living behind APIs. So what are those really about? If you're in a heavily regulated industry, you need to know. And even just as an engineering, company, you and an engineering team, you want to know what you're working with. So we give them transparency, we give them privacy. They can host the model anywhere they like. We tend to prefer the cloud, but there are other options. And no one should see the data that you send to that model, and no one should see the data you use to fine-tune the model, etc. So we think open source AI brings maximum transparency, maximum compliance, maximum privacy, maximum flexibility. And again, we believe and we see when we work with customers that the best business value, the highest business value will be realized when you take those off-the-shelf models and specialize them on your own data. That will always work better and be more cost-effective than working with a humongous general-purpose model. So who are we partnering with? When I say the community, what do I mean? It's a very wide community. It really goes from individual developers, students, etc., enthusiasts, contributing data, contributing models, again, contributing to the open source libraries, all the way to the largest tech organizations. And in fact, we had a Series D round just a few months ago. And so now around the table, we have companies like AWS and Google and IBM and Microsoft. And now I have to list them all. And Salesforce and Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, and I hope I didn't forget anyone. So these companies are investors in Hugging Face, which validates the open source AI philosophy and also makes it easy to partner with all of them, right? So you will find all those companies sharing models amazingly. So we have Salesforce models, we have Google models, we have Microsoft models, we have Meta models, the famous Llama 2, right? It's not open source versus the rest of the world, right? As some people initially thought. It's really open source AI across the world. And the largest tech companies will still share models, and we thank them for that. And they will also work on their closed models because they think these are too competitive and too specific to their business, and that's fine. I think there's room for all of that, and we really want to make sure, again, the state-of-the-art models remain open and that there is an alternative. And sometimes when we see a missing link in the open source portfolio of models, we go and train it. We released several models that are pretty unique and that are alternatives to closed models. So again, it's not a fight. It's a collaboration. It's a competition. It's the two things. But I think it's really important to realize that open source AI has made a lot of progress in the last few months and is now extremely competitive with the best models. And so let's see what happens in the next few months. See. Where is GenAI going? I don't have my crystal ball. I guess I need a model to answer that question. I think we've only scratched the surface, right? I think I think the launch of ChatGPT and the followers was a breakthrough, a technical breakthrough, but also I think a business breakthrough in the sense that now all of a sudden, all of us could experiment, not just engineers, right? You know, finance teams, HR teams, marketing teams, sales teams, they could figure out what AI could do for them and their customers. So that's very valuable. And again, we've seen a ton of progress. Having said that, the pace of innovation is still crazy. I mean, literally overnight, you see new models being released that improve, cost performance 2x. Right? You used to do this with a 13 billion parameter model. You can do better with a 7 billion parameter model. So I think we've only scratched the surface. There will be more technology breakthroughs. We will be able to build smaller, more nimble models that outperform the bigger models. We'll be able to get amazing performance through hardware acceleration. We'll be able to bring those models to edge devices, smartphones, et cetera, and also integrating different types of data, text, images, voice. A lot of the work has been very text-centric. We see some image generation tasks, but what happens when we start integrating voice, and all three modalities? I think we're going to see much more. So I think this is only starting. It's the AWS CEO said we're 3 steps into a marathon. I think we're 3 steps into, a 5,000 kilometer trek. So there's still time to get started, but it's never been easier to start experimenting. I would encourage everybody to do it. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And again, next time I will be there in person.